Hey everyone, it's Wednesday here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We've got a great friend of the show coming back, Brooke Pryor of ESPN. We're going to be breaking down the rumors. Aaron Rodgers, trade market, should the Steelers be going after him? Well, let's talk about the new Steelers defensive backs coach and my final grades on the tight ends this year in Stars and Skulls, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And as I said before, we're joined by Brooke Pryor of ESPN. She's the Steelers beat reporter over there. Brooke, it's always great to have you back. The offseason's here, so we can finally chill a little bit. We can't like take our foot off the gas a whole lot, but it's nice to not have something to do every day, all the time, 24/7.
100%. I mean, now I have time to really dive into the conspiracy theories of all the different players that are going to be on the Steelers roster in 2025. From what I read, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers with Kirk Cousins as his backup, Deebo Samuel, T. Higgins, and I feel like there's a running back out there somewhere that's also going to land in Pittsburgh. I would love to see all of those things happen. I love a good deep dive conspiracy theory Twitter scroll.
It's just, it comes every year, and I will be using lots of Mr. Krabs and the next day memes this off season. It's fun, but let's talk about the newest one, and maybe it's not the newest because there's Deebo Samuel, but we've done the Niners receiver route for so long. But the latest thing though that I think is interesting is the idea of Aaron Rodgers, and now there's also people coming out and saying, hey, the Steelers might not, Ian Rappaport, coming out and saying, hey, the Steelers might not go with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. And then people are throwing out, oh, Aaron Rodgers, he's going to be traded. He's told he's not the future in New York. Could he come to Pittsburgh? Brooke, I understand that there's a chance that like negotiations break down here, there, and there. I just think there's no logical reason or way for the Steelers to go with Aaron Rodgers. If Russell Wilson is too old, what does that make Aaron Rodgers? If this move has happened, this would be the, you know what? I don't know what we're doing here anymore. Like that would be the move that I could not get behind at all. 0% will I understand if they go get Aaron Rodgers. Are you on the same page with me here, or where do you?
100%. I'm on the same page, same line, same word, same letter within that word. It is. That would be. I mean, the definition of insanity is. Which is, I don't think it's actually like verbatim, but the whole like doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Aaron Rodgers isn't Russell Wilson, but that is a very similar move. And it did not work out. It worked out somewhat last year, but not enough to say, yeah, we want to run that back this coming year. To me, not only do you not get like the same upside that you got with Russell Wilson in the Moonball if you bring in Aaron Rodgers, to me, he's not as consistent. Right. He is also, I think, a terrible presence in the locker room. Like that is a personality that I would not say, you know what, let's bring this in. Let's see what this does. Like one of the intangibles that Mike Tomlin wanted in bringing in Russell Wilson was that he's a leader. His methods are a little corny, a little cheesy, whatever. You could see that kind of wearing thin on guys at the end, but like at his core, that positivity thing, I think is ultimately a good thing. I think he does have experience being a good leader. I can't say the same thing about Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. Like every single time he talks is a subtweet at someone. Mm-hmm. And it would be if you trade for Aaron Rodgers, it's not just the baggage of him personally that you bring into that building. You would also have to imagine he wants to try to bring in some of his guys. Like it's right. You don't just get Aaron Rodgers, the football player. You get Aaron Rodgers and the Pat McAfee appearances weekly. You get Aaron Rodgers and demanding that the team make trades to bring in Devontae Adams or Alan Lazard. Now, I don't think the Jets are going to play ball to that degree.
Right.
Maybe they let Devontae Adams go because, hey, his guy isn't in New York anymore, and I'm not sure what his contract status was. But you don't just get Aaron Rodgers. You get the Aaron Rodgers multiverse.
Show. Right.
And
multiverse.
Exactly.
I love
you get the multiverse show. I mean, it's all in the same thing. And so I think that the Steelers would have to cede a lot of control to Aaron Rodgers, and that does not feel like the direct route to getting back to not only trying to win a Super Bowl, but just win a playoff game. I think that this team is much better off sticking with Fields. I don't think that they should try to bring Russell Wilson back. I think they stick with Fields. I think in saying that they don't know if they're going to bring either of them back, that's a negotiation tactic. That's trying to take some leverage away from Justin Fields, saying, oh, fine, like you want to try to negotiate your way to a salary that we don't want to pay? That's fine. Maybe we don't want you. No, I think everyone knows the Steelers want Justin Fields. And then, either drafting a guy 3rd, 4th, 5th round, or looking out on the free agent market who's available to be a bridge backup type guy, someone, a Mitch Trubisky caliber, Jacoby Brissett, something like that, that's like a savvy vet that you can live with behind Justin Fields. Bring Kyle Allen back. I had the suggestion in my choose your own quarterback adventure. But none of those adventures are getting in on the Aaron Rodgers roller coaster. No, thank you.
I'm right with you, because Aaron Rodgers, like, this is the dude who, like, when they got 4 wins at the end of the season, he's bringing out boom boxes and things like that, leading them onto the field. There was no energy. And here's the other thing about this: like, the Jets were in a position when they got Aaron Rodgers, like, they were in the position where, like, they felt like, hey, we were on the cusp. We just get a quarterback who can make plays. We can be a threat, because they had a defense, they had an O-line, they had a run game, they had playmakers, they had Garrett Wilson, they had a lot of things lined up for them. And now Aaron Rodgers has almost torn all that away. Not that Robert Saleh was some genius, but he was part of building something there. And Aaron Rodgers forced him out the building. Now, I know there's some people that think that could be what the Steelers should do, is get Aaron Rodgers so he can get rid of Mike Tomlin. But he tears apart everything, and not just the bad, but he made the Jets, who seemed like they could be on the cusp of figuring things out and becoming a threat in the AFC. Now they're a joke again. And not only a joke, but they're a joke where if they cut him right now, they would have $49 million in dead money. Like, they can't even just cut him and make money off of it. Their contract with him is so bad, they're going to have to hurt themselves before they figure it out. And that's my problem with it too, is that you're going to be going after this guy that's going to bring all this attention, all these bad things. I don't think the Steelers are actually entertaining that. I'm with you. I think the plan has been, since the end of the season, when they did their season end avowals, and you were right there when Mike Tomlin was like, yes, Justin Fields has done enough to earn the consideration as a starter. This is to say, hey, Justin, you're not our only avenue, even though he is. Like, don't tell him, Omar, but Justin, you're not our only avenue. So we're going to try to use that to negotiate to not get you as big of a salary cap hit, so that we can go get these other guys. I think that's what the Steelers are doing right now. But if they were to go out and get Aaron Rodgers, to me, that means something went really wrong with Justin Fields. Then something went even more wrong with Russell Wilson, because I think that Russell Wilson would just, hey, take me back, anybody, please. I'd love to be somewhere next year. And then you went wrong in so many other directions before you said, okay, you know what? Let's give this guy a try. That to me is just, I think that's what, like you said, it's the carousel of what ifs that the Steelers fans are going through, and everyone's going to figure things out. Aaron Rodgers, to me, is far back on the list of what they could actually go for at quarterback.
Now, if you want to get really big brain, again,
Okay.
I said I've been scrolling conspiracy theories.
Uh-oh.
If I'm going to spin getting Aaron Rodgers into a good thing,
Okay.
you acquire Aaron Rodgers, just like that, you've got like a 4-13 season and a top 10 draft pick.
Then you get your quarterback next year.
So yeah, it's tanking while giving the illusion that you're not tanking. So if it's, a short-term failure for long-term success, we know the Steelers are not going to willingly tank. So then you just bring in a cancer, almost like put it like we're going to do some medieval medicine. You put a leech on, whatever to bleed it out. Like, you don't really want the leech, but like,
right.
It's going to stink for a little bit. And then eventually the poison is gone. So you just bring in the Aaron Rodgers leech treatment and you have a leech on your face for a little bit, but at the end of it, you're healed.
One can hope. It's
that's the only way it works. That is the farthest reach. I think I just like pulled something in my arm trying to reach and grab that.
And dear comment section, Brooke is not saying that is what the Steelers should do. She's saying that if you have this crazy conspiracy theory, that is probably the most likely one to ever result in a positive thing. I just don't see Aaron Rodgers fixing anything. The Steelers need leadership on offense. We talked about that. I think Russell Wilson brought some leadership to the offense. Like you said, that golden retriever energy, it's awesome. Like, hey, guys, we could do it. We could do it. We're going to be great. It was great when the Steelers were beating the Bengals by, with 44 points. It was awesome when he's inspiring people, but when he's throwing interceptions and pick sixes and fumbling at the goal line, and then they're losing by not scoring 17 points for a fifth week in a row. Then when you're going up to Cam Hayward at the end of the game and saying, hey man, we just need to win 4 in a row. That's when it comes off like, okay, man, like we get it. We get that's you, but like not now, man. And
that's Chihuahua energy. That's like,
dang, not even golden retriever, just Chihuahua.
Like because it just won't stop. It just won't stop, and you're like, please take a chill pill, and it just won't.
Keeps yipping.
Yes,
I think I'm right with you. That's I've never heard Chihuahua energy before, but I'm losing it. Okay, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, the Steelers have made a change to the coaching staff on the defensive back side. We'll talk about who that is, why that was, and what the biggest goals for that group need to be next season, as well as looking at my grades for tight ends, stars, and skulls, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. Be right back. But first, remind you the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. When the games tip off, the NBA action is just beginning on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because FanDuel is your home for NBA live betting. So even if you missed the first few minutes of the game or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can make your picks from the first whistle to the final buzzer. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join. New FanDuel customers started with $150 in bonus bets if you hit your first bet of $5 or more. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets if you hit your first bet of $5 or more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter with Brooke Pryor of ESPN. Brooke, big news coming out from the Steelers. Well, I guess big is subjective, but it is a confirmed coaching change. The Steelers going with Gerald Alexander as their defensive backs coach. Grady Brown being out as their defensive backs coach. Grady Brown had been the guy since Terrell Austin had taken over. Gerald Alexander was the assistant under Grady Brown from 2022 to 2023. Went to be the Raiders safety coach for a year, and of course that coaching group got blown up in a single year with Antonio Pierce being gone. So now he's back with the Steelers, but in the role that Grady Brown had. Brooks, what's your reaction to this? As we've been talking about coaching changes, and here's one of them, but Grady Brown wasn't on a lot of people's radars.
No, and I understand that there were a number of communication issues in the secondary, especially late in the year. A couple things jumped out to me. One, a lot of the things that were mentioned in Gerald Alexander's press release were about Minkah Fitzpatrick and the interceptions that he had when Gerald Alexander was his coach, the production that Minkah can do. All of these things tells me that this is a hire because of Minkah, or because they want to get that kind of production out of Minkah Fitzpatrick, and they felt like Grady Brown wasn't cutting it. He wasn't having that same kind of production with Grady. However, it feels, if you look at it through that lens, that's completely ignoring all of the picks that the other members of the secondary got in Minkah's absence. I mean, Deshaun Elliott had a great year. Dante Jackson had a great year. There's so much more to a secondary than just Minkah Fitzpatrick, but if anything, it makes me wonder, okay, so trading Minka is off the table. Like that's what it seems like by hiring Gerald Alexander and mentioning all of that. The other thing that jumped out to me, because I was told that Grady Brown's contract was not renewed. And this is where I think the Steelers could really stand to modernize the way that they do business, the way that they construct their staff. Why not keep Grady on, move him to coach specifically cornerbacks? Because I think we saw in Hard Knocks, in conversations I've had with Grady Brown, he has really, I think, formed a good relationship with Joey Porter Jr. Now, there's some development that I would still like to see from Joey, playing more consistently, not having as many penalties, not having the holding calls. But it seems like mentally and those intangibles, Grady has such a great demeanor for working with Joey. It seems like he and Joey really get along in that way. They're kind of understated guys. And Gerald Alexander's specialty is safeties. Great. Hire him to coach safeties and move Grady to corners. There's nothing wrong with having a more specialized coaching staff, especially when the Steelers last season had just 17 paid coaching assistants on the field, not including strength and conditioning. That's tied for the lowest with the Colts at 17. So take a small step into football in 2025, and let's have some specialized coaches.
Yeah, I think that's something we've all been talking about, right? Is the possibility or the potential for the Steelers to do what a lot of other organizations are doing, in that they're hiring run game and pass game coordinators for both sides of the ball. They're making sure that they have assistants who have significant NFL coaching experience, not just like recently former players, like, not to call these guys out, but Ryan Shazier or Vince Williams. They're with the Steelers every day. They're working on things, but they aren't guys who have been coaching in the NFL, have been around the league, have experimented with ideas, have learned from other head coaches and other coordinators that are up and comers that you're siphoning into your organization, or guys at the collegiate level that have innovated themselves to say, hey, this is something that could really work at this level. Let's do this. They aren't that level of coaches. These are the levels of coaches we're talking about. And Grady Brown, like you said, there were communications issues. There were alignment issues. There were problems in the secondary, especially in the second half of the year, that led to issues and that need to be cleaned up moving forward. And maybe that's why they're getting rid of Grady Brown in this instance. But at the same time, he was also the turnover culture guy. Like, he had those turnover shirts that everybody always wanted. He was the one that started that kind of stuff. And you could see in Hard Knocks and in your interviews with Grady and just talking to Joey Porter, how much that their relationship was valued. And maybe that's the pressing part here is that they want someone different to help Joey Porter Jr. grow, because Joey Porter Jr. has to become a true CB1 that's consistent. He doesn't have to be Pat Surtain, Defensive Player of the Year level. He doesn't have to be a top 5 cornerback. It would be nice if he was. But if he can be that consistent number 1 guy that runs with the top receivers, doesn't get called for a whole lot of penalties, and then also does manage to make plays here and there, get a few interceptions, and like you look at his numbers at the end of the year, wow, like no one really picked on Joey Porter Jr. this year. That's what the Steelers need. They need that guy in their defense. And to me, this is a sign that maybe they felt like Grady Brown wasn't helping with that. But again, it's going to be really interesting to see, okay, so what's your plan now? Because Gerald Alexander, supposedly he's more of a safeties guy, according, with the Raiders hiding there. And maybe that's just the way the Raiders used him, and, people misuse people all the time. The Steelers have done that themselves. But, I'm intrigued to see, like, okay, what goes behind this? Because I think Anthony Midget was the assistant DB's coach. Is there another assistant DB's coach that comes in? Are they keeping Anthony Midget and adding another person? These are the things that I think that the Rooneys could really help themselves and help their overall coaching staff by divvying up responsibilities and not forcing people to macro manage situations.
Exactly. I think that has been really a huge problem that the Steelers have had across the board, that they are just unwilling to spend the money to make meaningful changes. I mean, when Art Rooney II says, like, we don't anticipate any significant coaching changes, not going to be a bunch of big shakeups, and then is pretty resistant to the idea of hiring other assistant coaches, it tells me that the Steelers say, we're fine being stuck in the past. Everyone else is hiring more assistants, but we don't need this. And that's fine. But then you're not going to change. You're not going to move out of this cycle of mediocrity. And that's just where they are, and they are stuck if they're not willing to make these meaningful changes. If they're going to hire a safeties guy that maybe he'll prove us wrong. Maybe he will be a great fit for Joey Porter Jr. But at this point, I need to see it to believe it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is the Steelers, they have to prove something. And again, like, look, the Steelers have made certainly some good hires over the years. They've had plenty of really, good coaches that have done smaller things and helped the Steelers along. But right now, I think there's questions as far as what were going to be your changes this year. What were you going to change things up? Okay, you're not getting rid of Tomlin, you're not getting rid of Arthur Smith, you're not getting rid of Terrell Austin. Okay, let's see where you can go. One person on my list was Pat Meyer, and I like Pat Meyer. I think he's a good person. I think that he's done good things at times, but at the end of this year, the offensive line was not good. They were a mess. They were a big problem, and they were supposed to be a strength for the team. And granted, Troy Fautanu, James Daniels, those injuries, fed into things. Broderick Jones got hurt earlier in the season. Like, I get those things, but like that's where I thought the attention might be. And yes, the secondary did have problems down the stretch. I'm a little interested to see what is the play here? What is the strength that Gerald Alexander offers you that Grady Brown didn't, that you can, okay, we can push this forward. You could be that guy, because also like Grady Brown had an interview for a defensive coordinator job with the Falcons, I believe. So like he was being looked at as a potential successor somewhere else in moving up the ladder. So now you're losing two guys, and granted, I get maybe this is on me, Brooke, because I don't fully, maybe this is me kind of coming around to understanding it. When we talked about the communication issues, right? Who does that often fall upon? The linebackers and the DBs. Who are the two coaches that we know are out right now? Aaron Curry, Grady Brown. Maybe that's where this is coming from. But I think that it's like you can swap those guys in, and unless those guys you're swapping in can really fix those problems, you're still going to have the same issue where you're understaffed at this assistant coaching level, and it's going to force these guys to not only do their jobs as far as coaching these players specifically up in their groups, but also do the analysis and apply that to every week's game plan and the things that other teams hire multiple assistants to do.
Exactly, and it also, I wonder how much of the issues fall on the assistants and how much falls on Terrell Austin as the defensive coordinator. How much of it falls on Mike Tomlin as Terrell Austin's boss, who we know is very involved in the defense. This feels like making change for the sake of making change, and understanding that you're kind of hamstrung in terms of you're not going to be given the budget to extend the staff, to get more guys that could help with communication issues, that could help with development, that, you have one guy that's in charge of schemes, one guy that's in charge of specific types of development, things like that, instead of having Grady Brown, who is not only the secondary coach, but also the turnover culture guy. And like, what does that involve? Is that just printing t-shirts, or are you coaching specific techniques to linebackers, defensive line, secondary, all of those guys? It seems like the Steelers are really dragging their feet. And this ultimately goes back to Art Rooney II, saying that he doesn't believe that staff size is the issue. And I mean, it kind of remains at this point, that does seem to be one of the areas that's holding this team back. If you're not going to be able to either trade up and get a game-changing player with a top 10 pick, or have a season that gives you a top 10 pick, you've got to be willing to do something different. And at this point, it doesn't seem like the Steelers are.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see what is the tactic that they're hoping. And listen, part of it's development, right? We've been talking about player development. That's what they want to see on the O line. That's what they want. That's what they need to see in the secondary. But who's going to bring around that development? And if you're not hiring more assistant coaches, you better hope that the ones that you are hiring are just that much more of difference makers in getting that there. We still don't know who's going to be the new linebackers coach. We still don't know. Art Rooney told you to your face, Brooke, that he's not adding to this coaching staff. So, all right. So what are those moves? We'll keep track of them. We'll keep reporting on them as we see them. But at least we know the first new addition, I guess, kind of new addition.
New old
Edition. Like, hey, big head, is Gerald Alexander. We'll be talking more about that in the coming days and weeks as we continue to analyze how the Steelers handle their coaching staff. But we got to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to Brooke about my tight end grade, stars and skulls in the season, Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, and specifically how Arthur Smith used them. That next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, remind you this show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Football season may be over, but basketball season is in full swing, and there's no better way to stay in the game than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. This week, I'm looking at Jason Tatum for more than 29 points and Anthony Davis more than 12 rebounds. Best part, Prize Picks is quick and easy. You can set up your lineup in less than 60 seconds, and they're fast with secure withdrawals, meaning you'll get your winnings within as little as 15 minutes. Plus, you love their weekly promos like Taco Tuesday, where you get discounted player projections for even better value. Download the app today or use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. We're back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Brooke Pryor of ESPN. Brooke, all season long, we do our grades week after week, game after game, and we give players grades on the season. It's stars and skulls. 1 to 3 stars for good to elite play, 1 to 3 skulls for bad to terrible play, and then we stack them up at the end of the season, see where you are. You can also get a neutral grade because, you can just be mid, which there's several times where that happens. But looking on the year, we've been breaking it down. We've done quarterbacks, we've done running backs, we've done I think we've done the secondary now. No, we've done corners. We've done linebackers and D-lines. I think we're down to safeties. Tight ends are today, wide receivers, and special teamers. So we're almost done with our final grade segment. But let's get to the tight ends here. And I want to go over to stack these two together because these are kind of the bottom of the depth chart guys. Connor Hayward on the season, not used a whole lot, just 1 star and 1 skull. Really, I can't really grade too much out of that, so he gets a C for just being, right in the middle of the road there. Same thing sort of for Michael Pruitt. He had a couple really nice plays. I never really saw the big detriment of Michael Pruitt, considering he's the 3rd tight end, made a couple nice plays, but also was hurt for a good chunk of the season, so that'll contribute to it. But Brooke, I think the big thing is with those guys is there seemed to be like a really big effort to get those guys involved in different ways at times, and it felt weird how Arthur Smith was forcing that in certain situations when I think the Steelers' top 2 tight ends are some pretty good players.
It very much felt like, to borrow a Mean Girls phrase, stop trying to make Michael Pruitt happen. It's not going to happen. It really just felt like, especially considering he was hurt for a lot of the year. Darnell Washington, to me, is a much better both Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington are head and shoulders better. Why are you trying to make Michael Pruitt a thing? Like, if he's your secret weapon, what are we doing? Same thing with Connor Hayward. I think, to me, Michael Pruitt is more of like a prototypical tight end. Has the body, has the skills. Connor Hayward is such a tweener that I don't think anyone particularly knows what to do with him. Like, he's too small to be a true fullback, too big to be a true running back, too small to be a true tight end. He can catch like a tight end, but he's kind of too small to do the blocking. And I just feel like, again, he's another situation where there was a lot of like trying to force it to make it happen. Like, well, we have this guy, we might as well use him. And neither one of those guys, I can understand if there was frustration from Pat Freiermuth or Darnell Washington that it seemed like there were limited opportunities for tight ends in this offense. And then when you are losing out on those few opportunities to Michael Pruitt, it's like, what are we doing here? Like, Darnell and Pat should be some of the cornerstones of your offense, especially when the wide receiver group is as weak as it is. Like, this offense should have been running through Pat Freiermuth. And at times it looked like it might, particularly against Cincinnati, because for whatever reason, he just feasts on the Bengals. But it wasn't consistent. Same thing with Darnell Washington, is there were times that he would make a great catch and then rumble down the sidelines for 20 minutes. Like, wow, who knew he could do that? Maybe we should do that more. And then the Steelers wouldn't do that more. So it felt like at times it felt like Arthur Smith had all these tricks up his sleeve, but he was like, I can't show them. Don't want to let people know what's coming. It's like, no, but at some point you need to use that trick. Otherwise, what's the point in having them all up your sleeve if you're never going to let any out?
It's like having the rabbit in the hat and then just be like, but well, who knows if it's there? But I feel you on that. And that's why when we get to these grades, you look at those guys in their season, they're getting these chances here. Darnell Washington on the year, I give a B-. Like, he was pretty solid when he was in the 13 stars, only 2 skulls. There weren't too many games where I felt like he had a negative impact on the Steelers. And it's just like, maybe if he was featured a bit more, he would have had a bigger impact on things. I mean, heck, in the games that he was able to contribute more in, I felt like he was a difference maker, both in the blocking, in run blocking, in what he was able to do with the line of scrimmage. But then when also you involved him in the passing game, and it's just I feel like it's a shame that touchdown in week 2 where they're playing the Broncos in Denver, and it's just Justin Fields just boop, throw it to him on the fade, and they were just looking at the corner like, you can't stop that. You're not 6'7", and he never scored a touchdown again this season. And I'm just like, what happened? That seemed like a gimme play where you don't have to even think that much. Like especially for Justin Fields when he was there, and then when Russ was struggling, Russ may be short, but you know what helps short guys? Throwing up jump balls to the pylon. And I feel you, because I feel like Darnell Washington is this. I wouldn't say he's a Ferrari. I don't know cars well enough to be able to say like
he's a Hyundai Genesis.
That's good.
Like
car. I don't know.
Yeah, Hyundai Genesis. It's like it's like the top tier of a Hyundai, but it is like
okay. He's a Hyundai Genesis. I had to look it up on Google.
My husband has said for years that is his favorite car. Like if he could just like he used to work at Enterprise, drove a lot of rentals, and he said it was the smoothest ride he's ever had. It's not in the top tier luxury like the Lambo or even a Mercedes or a BMW, but like as far as just like run of the mill cars that everybody can get, it's like the top tier of like the everyday brands that you see on the road. And it is I think a great car. It can get you where you want to go, and you're going to be riding in style and feel really comfortable when you do it. It's reliable, and it's got a little bit of flash. It's definitely a comfort right below luxury tier, maybe even like cusp of luxury tier. To me, the Steelers play with Darnell Washington like they're afraid he's going to break, or they're afraid that he's going to be exposed as not as good as they think he is, or people think he is. So they're like, well, we can't give him too much exposure. Like, what if this is the time that he drops the pass? Or like, it feels like there was just hesitancy to let him do what he does. That's why they're not throwing to him more. It's like they're like, he's delicate. That man, maybe he is, but like, I don't know. It's like when you get a nice candle and you're afraid to burn it because you're like, well, I mean, I'm only going to have it for so long. I got to pick exactly the right moment to burn this really nice candle. Like, okay, but until then, you've just got it sitting there for what purpose? Like, just use it. I have that issue. Sometimes I buy nice candles. I'm like, this is so expensive, I can't burn it. Well, then I've just spent money to see it sitting on my shelf. Like,
exactly.
Burn
your candles.
Exactly. But burn your candles,
but
throw
safely.
to your tight ends.
Yeah,
safely.
Absolutely. Let's finish up here. Pat Freiermuth, similar vein here. 17 skulls, 17 stars, 3 skulls. Good enough for a B+ grade. And I think that part of that came because Pat dropped a few passes late in the season. He dropped what could have been a chance to set up an overtime game against the Bengals in that regular season finale, and then he dropped a pass or two in the playoff game. So, like, honestly, like before even those last 2, it was tough to find games where he had a really bad impact on, because he was either just, hey, I'm here and I'm contributing what I can, or he was being a really good playmaker for the Steelers. And to your point, like he's when he gets involved, he's such a problem for them. And in fact, he scored the only touchdown against the Bengals in that one. I think they actually no, Najee scored another one, but still, he scored the only receiving touchdown against the Bengals in that one. And he was he was a guy that like was showing progress with the team. He was one of those guys. Like, if there's someone who's developed, I think, to be better, Pat Freiermuth could be on that list, but use him more. Like, the most yards that he had in a game this year was 85 yards in that second game against the Bengals. Like, I feel like there's so many more things that they could have done with him. And the first game against the Bengals, 6 catches, 68 yards. Awesome. But like, when you're going up against teams that don't have superior linebackers who have trouble covering those stuff, he should be so much more, especially when you don't have the number 2 wide receiver that everyone's been craving for. Like, this was the year to flash him out there and say, hey, Arthur Smith, I can get my tight ends involved more, even without the other wide receivers. So I'm right with you here. Like, to me, the tight ends, like, if we're looking at Steelers assistant coaches right now, I feel like Alfredo Roberts is doing a heck of a job. But his main job should be, hey, Arthur, involve my guys more because they're making plays.
100%. I think that's a great point. Pat is someone who has definitely developed. Fredo has done a great job with that unit. And I'm looking through his game logs. It is wild. He only has one game with over 100 receiving yards in his whole career.
In his whole career.
And this is his 4th season. Oh boy. I mean, he's missed some time in those first 3 years, but he played a complete season this year.
Mm-hmm.
And still only had the second most. He had, how many yards did he have? He had 653 receiving yards, and he played 17 games. In 2022, he played 16 games and had 732 receiving yards. Like,
that was Matt Canada.
That was a Matt Canada year. That should not be the case. I think that Pat Freiermuth is their best, most consistent offensive weapon. To me, he has the tools to be a Travis Kelce, to be a George Kittle. Like, but use him. Use him more. Scheme him open. Like, the number of times that I felt like I saw Russ just not see him was so frustrating. Like, he can be your security blanket.
Mm-hmm.
Use him. Target him. Like, I don't think that his lack of involvement and lack of production this year, I mean, when there were lacks, was his fault. And I think the fumbles at the end of the year, it really stinks because he had such a good year to that point. And I don't think it should take away from the season that he had. Yes, they were big mistakes and big moments. But when I look at the load that he was carrying offensively and the pressure that I'm sure he was feeling to be the guy that, like, all right, I've got to make a play. I've got to make a play. This has got to be on me. I'm getting so few opportunities. This offense is getting so few opportunities because we can't sustain drives. The fact that it took until the end of the year to have those mistakes is pretty impressive. And if I recall correctly, that Bengals game was super cold.
It was,
wasn't it? Like, a lot of guys were having issues holding on to the ball.
That is very true.
Both sides. So it stinks, but I still think Pat Freiermuth, I think that it was a good decision for them to extend him before last season. I think his price would have only gone up. And I think that he's an important guy to keep around, not only for the on-field value and the production, if you get him with the right quarterback, but also in terms of, being a leader. This offense needs leaders, and I think that he is that guy. I would not be surprised if he's a captain next year. I know that there have been a lot of seasons where there are 2 defensive captains and just 1 offensive captain. To me, he is trending in the direction of being an offensive captain.
Absolutely. Brooke, thank you so much for joining us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's been a minute since we had you on. We'd like to have you on again before the draft. Let people that can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
It is all on Twitter at BE Pryor, also on Blue Sky with at BE Pryor, and then whatever you put the dashes on after Blue Sky. They've really got to streamline those social media handles. But I really like it. I need to be more engaging on there, but it is my goal to post more. And on ESPN.com under the NFL tab.
Absolutely. She's Brooke Pryor. Brooke, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social medias at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here every Monday through Friday on the Locked On Steelers podcast, talking about your Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm back from vacation, y'all, so all the episodes coming out now, they're current. I finally am not stressing if the Steelers are going to trade George Pickens before I come back from my vacation. So thank goodness for the Steelers for doing that. But we're back tomorrow with more on your Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.